Now that I have all of my threads cut out and pulled out, I'm ready to start my needle weaving. To do that, I'm going to use a smaller pearl cotton. This is number 12 pearl cotton, so my cluster box are number 8, and then my needle weaving will be number 12. And again, I'm using an embroidery needle, tapestry needle. And before you start needle weaving, you need to think about where you're going and what you're going to do. You have to be strategic as you're doing your needle weaving, because you don't want to get stuck in the middle. You don't want to have to tie off your thread in the middle of a section of needle weaving. You always want to tie it off at the corners or the edges. So a lot of times on the pattern, it will tell you which way to go. On this one, this is something that I just kind of came up with following a different pattern. So I'm just going to look at this and decide, okay, I'm going to start here and go down and then over, down and over. It's always better to do diagonal rather than straight across. I wouldn't go there and then there and then there, because it makes it look funny. It looks better if you make a 90-degree turn in between each needle weaving bar. Okay, so I'm going to go down and then over, down, over, and then I'll go up and over, and then come around and down and over, all the way across. If I'm going to run out of thread, I want to make sure that I make it to the edge, so I may end up with a bunch of thread left over, and that's okay. I don't want to get so close to the end of my thread that I'm going to run out. So to start it off, I'm going to go to the back side here, and I'm just going to pass my thread underneath a couple bars. And this is going to be very easy to pull out at first, so I'm going to hold it with my hand to try and keep it from pulling out as I'm starting. And then I'm going to come up in between, in the middle of the 4 threads right here. Okay, so now I'm going to weave back and forth around these 2 threads and these 2 threads. But I need to think about, whoops, I'm in the wrong spot. Sorry, I want to come here instead. There we go. So I'm going to be weaving between these 2 bars and these 2 bars. So I need to think about which way I'm going to go after this. So I'm going to go here, and then I'm going to go to the right. If I want to go to the right, then my last stitch on this bar needs to be on the left. So I'm going to start on the right so that I'll end up on the left. So I'm just going to go around and back through the middle here. And then around and back through the middle here. And it's easier to do it sideways, so that you're not having to pass the needle back the wrong direction. And I'm pulling it a little bit tight, but I'm not scrunching it up. And then my finger is kind of holding it in place on the back side. So I'm going to pull it kind of tight. And I don't want the threads to overlap. I want them just to sit nicely next to each other. And I'm going to keep weaving back and forth until I fill up the bar. Now be careful not to put too many stitches on each bar. If you do, you will stretch out the threads that you're weaving on, and you may not notice it at first, but when you do all the way across your work, it's going to start waving and it's not going to lay nicely. So it's better to put less than more. Too little is better than too many. So let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I think I'm just going to stick with 6. That looks good. So my last stitch, instead of coming back to the middle here, I'm actually going to pass it all the way through to the middle over here. Now 6 is what I'm doing on this one, but it may not be, it depends on the size of your fabric, the thread count of your fabric, whether you do 6 or 8 or 4. Just do what looks nice on there, and you can spread out the threads a little bit to fill up the whole space. But like I said, you don't want to cram too many on there. Okay, so now let's think about this. I'm going to go to the left, which means I want my last stitch to be on the right, which means I want my first stitch to be on the left. And I'm going to turn my fabric because it's easier to work up and down than side to side. So I'm going to go this direction first. And again, I've got my finger kind of just holding the threads on the back side. And just back and forth. Now, I did 6 on the last one. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to do 6 on every one. It's not something you're going to be able to tell. Again, you just want to fill up the space nicely and not put too many on. If you get to 5 and you feel like there's enough, you can stop. If you get to 7 or 6 and you feel like there's too much room left, you can do 7. Just, it doesn't seem to go on exactly the same every time. Oh, you know what? I didn't want to go there. I want to end on that last stitch because I don't want to do 2 more stitches. I think it'll be too many. So I'm on my last stitch and I want to go all the way across underneath to in between these 2 stitches because that's where I'm going next. And I'll just spread that out a little. Okay. And that is how you do needle weaving. There are several different kinds of needle weaving. This is just a woven bar needle weaving. You can also go all the way across, so I wouldn't necessarily mix it in the same project, but another way that you can do needle weaving is just go all the way around like this. But if you look around on the internet, you can find a whole bunch of different types of needle weaving. But I'm not going to do that on this project. That was just a demonstration, so I'm going to undo that. Let me just show you how to end. Okay, so on this one, I am going to go this direction, so that means I want to do the same direction as my first stitch so that my last stitch will be the opposite direction. But I'm going to actually tie it off. Now, if you're doing dove's eyes, or any type of decoration to fill up the holes, I will have another tutorial that shows how to do that. You do the dove's eyes and the needle weaving at the same time. I just haven't gotten to a space where I'm going to do that, so I'll have that in my next video. So look for that if you're going to do that. Okay, so I get to the end and I'm just going to go around to the back. And now I want to be careful where I'm going to tie it off. I don't want to go this way because if I go that way, then it's going to show through to the front. I want to make sure that I go either straight out or I go the opposite direction so that this gets held in place so that it looks good from the front. Actually, that looks a little wonky from the front, so I'm just gonna spread it out, make it look nice, and then you just pass it under a couple of stitches and clip it off. Good luck.